If you suffered with low back pain before in the past, or maybe you're currently suffering from it, then you know just how much it affects almost everything that you do within your day. And if you suffered from it once, then you certainly don't want to suffer from it again. So in this video, I'm going to show you my most important and critical exercises that you must do after you got out of the pain to ensure that this doesn't come back again and to give yourself the best chance of fixing this for good. Let's begin. The cause of low back pain generally comes down to some kind of trauma. Now usually that's physical trauma, and that's either a macro injury or a micro injury. Macro injuries will be things like slip or fall or car accident, and a micro injury will be things like a postural repetitive strain injury. What that does is that it causes a lack of function into the spine, which basically means that the spine develops movement patterns that starts to irritate certain areas of the spine, such as the joint, the ligaments and the muscles, that then eventually causes injury and damage to that area, and then you start to get pain in specific areas of your spine. In the same way that if your car tire is not aligned properly, then you start to get more wear and tear in certain areas of that tire. The similar thing happens within the spine. And so you need proper movement and function within the spine to ensure that the pressure is being dissipated evenly and it's not all being focused onto one point. Now, a vital part of spinal function is how well the core muscles, the muscles that surround your spine, are working. Your core is your first line of defense. Any twists, turns or jolts that goes through your spine requires your core to react fast enough and adequately enough to protect your spine from further damage. Particularly if you've had a previous injury to your spine, you are likely to have weaknesses within those areas. And so the first thing that you need to do if you suffered with back pain before is to ensure that you get yourself checked by a chiropractor or someone that can check your spine specifically for proper motion and function within your spine to ensure that you're not further damaging the spine every time you move it. Then the most important thing you need to do is ensure that the muscles surrounding your spine, your core muscles, are working to their very best function to ensure that they are adequate enough to be able to protect you again into the future. There is a substantial amount of evidence of comparisons between those that have suffered with low back pain and those that are healthy in the way that we contract and activate our core muscles. It tends to be that those that have suffered with low back pain tend to activate these muscles a lot slower, and they tend to be a lot weaker than those who have not suffered with back pain in the past. Now, the worst way to train your core is to do sit-ups, because what you're doing is you're flexing your spine repetitively under load for a long period of time. This is a very unnatural thing to do with your spine because you don't usually use your core muscles very much to flex your spine. You use your core muscles more to keep your spine level and straight and stable. And so the exercises that we're going to go through are going to be isometric exercises. And I would highly recommend that anyone that's going to train the core, whether you suffer with low back pain or not, but particularly if you suffer with low back pain, to train it in an isometric way. So the exercises that I'm about to go through are the best ones that I know of to train them in a healthy way and in a functional way, in a way that we are designed to use the core, and therefore this is going to really help prevent any low back pain into the future. Just make sure that you're not currently in pain when you do this. This is something to do when you're out of pain to bring back the function of your core muscles. So the first exercise is called a bird dog. This is one of my favorite exercises because it strengthens the core in a way that puts the least amount of pressure and stress through your spine. So particularly if you've just recovered from low back pain, this is a good one to start with. So what you're going to do is go onto your all fours, so your hands and knees are on the floor, and get yourself in a 90-90 position. So you've got 90 degrees with your shoulders and 90 degrees with your hips. There are many stages to this exercise, so we can make it as hard as we like. So the first thing we're going to do is simply just bring one leg up into the air and then slowly bring it back. Now, I want to stress the slowness of this exercise, because the slower that you do this, the more that you're going to get out of it and the more that your core needs to activate and work harder. If you do this fast, firstly, you're not going to get the best form, and secondly, your core is not going to be working as hard as if you did it slow. So the important part to focus on here is not the fact that I'm bringing my leg up, it's the fact that I'm keeping my spine stable and level. The weight of my leg will naturally rotate my spine if my core is not activating properly. So what I would suggest to ensure that you're not twisting, because sometimes you can be twisting slightly without even noticing it, is to place a ball on your low back so that if you are twisting, that ball will simply just fall off and you'll know about it. Once you really master this exercise, then you don't necessarily need to do the ball. So once you've done the first side, then you can switch and do the second side. And that's the first stage of this exercise. The second stage, to make it a little bit harder, is you're going to do exactly the same thing with your leg, but now you're going to move the opposite arm. Do the same thing, bring it up nice and slow, and then hold for a couple seconds at the top, and then really slowly down. Particularly on the down, you want to go really slowly. Again, having the ball on your low back to ensure that you're not twisting. And then once you've done that one side, then you can do the same thing on the other side. The third stage of this exercise then, to make it even harder, is to bring your hands and knees closer together. This is going to bring in your center of gravity and make it harder for you to balance. Once you're in that position, you can do the exact same thing, bringing your one arm and one leg all the way up and then all the way down really slowly, and then switching on to the other side. To then make it even harder, the fourth stage will be to do one side at a time before moving on to the other side. So you would do your 5 or 6 reps on one side all at once, and then you'll switch over to the other side and again do your 5 or 6 reps on that side. This will give your core muscles more fatigue and stress them more on that side. The fifth stage then, to make it even harder, will be to close your eyes. This is going to make it harder for you to balance and therefore your core muscles to work even harder. And the great thing about this part is that once you close your eyes, you're relying on the proprioception from your muscles. Essentially what that is the signals that go from your muscles to your brain to tell your brain the position of your spine. When you're closing your eyes, your body has to rely on this even more, which then trains this pathway. Your brain needs to know where your spine is very, very quickly in time, because if you move your spine very quickly and your brain doesn't get those signals immediately, then your brain cannot react quick enough to activate your core and therefore protect you from those twists. So that's the first exercise. That's a good place to start. The second exercise is actually a very similar exercise, but you're now doing on your back. So it's kind of in the reverse. So we call this the dead bug, because you're in the dead bug position. So what you're going to do is lie on your back, and then you're going to put your knees and shoulders again into a 90-90 position, but now they're facing up into the air. So your shin should be parallel with the roof, and your hand should be pointing straight up to the ceiling. Once you're in this position, what you're going to do is simply bring one leg and the opposite arm down to the floor, but not all the way. You want to leave a slight gap so you're still activating muscles to maintain the position of your arm and your leg. Hold for a couple of seconds and then slowly bring it up. Again, with this exercise, you want to be going as slow as you can. Once you've done that, then you can switch over onto the other side. So again, this is very similar to the bird dog, but you're just on the opposite position. So this could be a good alternative if you have any knee issues, or for whatever reason you're struggling to be in the hands and knees position. Just make sure that with all these exercises, if you get any pain at any point, then stop. Or if you're not going to stop, then at least reduce the amount that you're doing, because these aren't exercises that you want to get through the pain. There shouldn't be any pain at all when you do them. But of course, you are going to get that kind of muscle activation, those kind of delayed onset muscle soreness, particularly the next day, which is a good sign, means that those muscles are working. The third exercise that I'm going to go through is an exercise I would suggest doing or starting once you've really mastered the bird dog and the dead bug. The reason being is because this exercise, although it's very commonly well known and commonly done in the gym, is one that actually puts a lot of stress and strain through your spine. There's a lot of pressure that goes through your spine when we do this exercise. So this is going to be a plank, very easy. Most people usually know how to do this. What you're going to do is go onto your elbows and onto your toes, and you're just going to put yourself in a very neutral straight position so that your pelvis is not too far down to the floor and it's also not too high. You might want to get someone to watch you when you do this so that you can get into a very good position, and you're just going to hold it there for as long as you can. Now, there is research to show that those that can't do a plank for at least 60 seconds are a much higher risk at developing low back pain into the future. So if you can't currently do 60 seconds, then it's vital that you train yourself to at least be able to do 60 seconds, but hopefully even more into the future. Now, there are a couple ways to make this harder that I quite like, particularly to train your oblique muscles within your core. And that's to, when you're in that position, to take a hand off and put it by your side. Now, this is harder than it looks, although it might look hard, because what you end up doing is twisting. So what you have to do when you do this is you have to activate your core. You have to really activate your core before taking your hand off, so that as soon as you take your hand off, there is no movement within your spine. But this is a very good way to advance the plank and make your core the very best that it can. So when that hand is off, I would hold for around 5 or 10 seconds and then slowly bring it back to my starting position, and then you do the same thing with the other side. When you do this, another thing you can do is you can roll onto your side, which will then allow you to train the lateral portion of your core muscles. Again, you would hold this for maybe 30 to 60 seconds, and then you return back to the position, and then you can do the same thing going on to the other side. Just make sure again when you're twisting that the spine stays absolutely straight. So they're my 3 main exercises for the core. Now, another aspect of preventing low back pain is the glutes. There is a lot of research to show that those that have poor glute strength have a much higher chance of developing back pain again into the future. So we want to make sure that your glute muscles are at an adequate strength to be able to protect your spine. So the first one's going to be the easiest one, nice and simple really. You're going to lie on your back, your feet flat on the floor, and then you're simply just going to bring your pelvis up to the ceiling so that your spine is then level when you get to the top. And then again, with this exercise, like every exercise that I prescribe, make sure you're doing it slow. Most people do these exercises too fast. When you're at the top, really slowly bring everything down, and I would go not right to the bottom, but almost so you're touching the floor, and then go up again. You can then repeat this around 10 times and 3 sets. That's a general amount of repetitions I would suggest for most of these exercises. To make this exercise harder, you can then go on to one leg, and this is going to then focus on one glute on one side, and that's going to then double the amount of weight, doing the exact same thing where you're going up and then slowly down. And then once you've done that one side, then you switch over to the other side. Now, the last glute exercise I'm going to go through is a more advanced version, and this really does work the glute in a slightly different way. And when we do work muscles, it's always good to train them in at least a couple of different ways, so they're being challenged in different ways. So this is going to be what we call a DNS exercise. DNS stands for Dynamic Neurostabilization exercise, and this one is certainly a harder one to master. So definitely watch this closely and make sure that you're doing this properly. So what you're going to do is lie onto your side, so you're on your elbow and then on your knee. You're going to then bend your knee so it's about 90 degrees, and then you've got 90 degrees with your elbow, and then you're going to mirror your bottom knee with your top knee, so that your shin is parallel with your lower shin and your thigh is relatively parallel with your lower thigh. You're then going to parallel your arms as much as possible, so they're pointing in the same direction. And then what you're going to do is pivoting on your elbow and on your knee, so you might want to make sure you're on a soft surface. You're going to bring your pelvis up and around. When you get to the top, then you're going to really slowly go down. Again, really slowly with this exercise. And then you can repeat this 8 to 10 times before then switching on to the other side. You should feel this pretty quickly into your glute muscle. If you don't, you're probably not doing this right. So follow this carefully. And this is the same with almost every exercise that we do, is that you should be feeling the fatigue within the muscle that we are targeting. And if you're not, you either need to up that exercise, or it might be that you're not doing it correctly. So before I go through this last exercise, if you are new here to this channel, then please do consider subscribing for new videos like this one twice a week. So the last exercise is going to be very simple. We kind of do this every single day, but not necessarily intentionally, and that's going to be walking. Walking has so many different health benefits within our bodies. If you want to find out more about walking, then check out my video here. Walking is one of the best things and most common things that I prescribe for low back pain. So if you want to prevent low back pain, particularly if you have a very sedentary job, you want to make sure that you're walking every single day, around 30 to 60 minutes at least. And when you're walking, you want to make sure that you're getting good stride length and that you're naturally swinging your arms. This is then going to get good movement within the spine. The center of your disc does not have a blood supply, so it requires the movement that comes from things like walking for pumping action to occur within the disc to pump in those nutrients that you need. So if you want to recover from low back pain, particularly a disc issue, you want to be walking as much as you can. So I hope you found this video valuable and that you find these exercises useful. Do give them a go, and I will see you on the next video. Take care. Bye bye.